Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
All right. How's it going, everybody? I'd like to welcome you guys to the next episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast. Today, I have my awesome guest, Michael Cox, who is one of the most amazing sales recruiters out there. Real quick, want to give yourself an introduction?
Sure, man. I am an amazing recruiter. No, I've been in recruiting over 20 years now. I actually started when I was in university and did it for 4 years after university and still didn't know I was actually doing something called recruiting. It was just, I didn't know that there was a recruiting industry. It's crazy. And then I went into sales for a number of years, 4 or 5 years and maybe longer. And then went back into agency recruiting and then went into corporate recruiting. And then perfect timing on my behalf, at the very end of 2019, I decided to jump and go solo. So
awesome. Yeah, no, that's actually one of the reasons why I actually wanted to interview you. You kind of like have a little bit of a similar story as I do. You know, the agency world, the corporate world, and then jumping out on your own. So yeah, tell me about that jump to your own.
Man, I couldn't have picked I don't know, some would say a worse year. I would certainly, I can make the argument for it was the worst possible time. But even now, when we're starting to come out of that and we're seeing organizations hiring more, I don't think I would go back and change that. I mean, not to put a crazy downer on the mood, but we had the coronavirus. My wife was diagnosed with cancer and is almost done with chemotherapy. Oh. And I'm unemployed, technically gainfully unemployed for now over a year. And I don't think I would go back to I still wouldn't go back. You know, the whole hindsight thing, man, we have survived and learned a ton. And so I think I'd still say, yeah, I'd do it all over again. Wouldn't change a thing. So
now, well, mind if I ask, like, what made you do the official jump?
So I'm beyond my non-disclosure and all that wonderful stuff. But basically, so I was leading recruiting for a local organization based here in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And then got kind of called up to the big leagues and started leading sales recruiting for Xerox nationally at one point there were 42 sister companies that were wholly owned subsidiaries of Xerox. And these were organizations that had 100 to close to 1,000 total employees. And everything was going great, but we weren't seeing eye to eye with regard to the style of recruiting that I had and the program that I wanted to institute, which was much more maybe aggressive and definitely more proactive. And so we agreed that no, this isn't making sense. And I knew I wasn't going to survive. So I was happy to leave the organization and kind of put my money where my mouth is and prove that, hey, all of these bright ideas that are bouncing around my recruiter brain actually make sense. And by golly, I'm going to prove it. And I did for a number of years. For a number of months. And then, kind of like the Rona put the freeze on everything. And then, after March timeframe, I was thinking, gosh, I hope they don't call me back and say, hey, Michael, how you doing? Because then I'd have to tell them it's going terrible.
Yeah, no, definitely with you last year. Was interesting with Corona. Like half our clients just went like, "Hey, cool, we're done."
We're done. See you next year. And it's kind of like December 31st, everybody was still thinking, so this whole coronavirus thing is over like in 24 hours, right? Like we're magically expecting it to just evaporate in January. But yeah, I even had individuals that were scheduled to receive offer letters the day that this client organization said, we're not hiring, we're going to freeze everything for right now, and we'll get back to you in a couple of days, which turned out to be several months. Yeah, I was like, man, that is a long couple days. Could you define couple?
So, are they over yet?
They've come back this month.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I was fortunate enough. I was blessed that. So my last month was October with my former employer, and November made some good connections. December started working. January was good. February was good. March was even still good, except for those 2 or 3 that kind of went and evaporated on me. And then it was just literally nothing for many a moon until I'd say about October of last year. And I think one of the big reasons why things dried up so much for me is I didn't have any I didn't have 5 or 8, 10, 20 clients in the hopper. It was just I had a handful of relationships, and 2 or 3 of which were currently hiring and wanted to work with me. So,
is there something that you did during that downtime that really helped you set up for this year?
Oh, absolutely. So, training and books and practicing and getting over, because the big difference we have, recruiters, we're good at recruiting, but you can't recruit for anything if you don't go out and make the business happen, go out and actually sell again. The advantage that I have a sales background. I was successful in sales. So I started picking up the phone, and it's kind of like you build your list of 100 people that you think you've got at least an in towards, and 5% of those 100 say, yeah, man, let's talk and do some business. Of those 5, 3 came through with immediate needs that I was able to fill. But to bridge the gap from 3 to a more significant number, it takes some true salesmanship, if you will, and that's something that as recruiters I think we lack, definitely.
I think that's across the entire industry. It's one of the things that you see, like recruiters are either like sometimes better in sales or better in recruiting, and it's like if you're running a show like a 1-2-man show like ourselves, you have to be good at both.
Yeah.
To be successful.
Definitely. Yeah. And you're lacking in one if you don't have a partner or somebody that's teaching you how. It's going to be that's a gap that's really difficult to ignore or avoid or keep chugging along without being able to bring in new business or fill the business that you've got. You've got to do both, definitely.
And you mentioned like you were digging into books. Do you have like a favorite book? It's a question that I ask everybody. What is like your favorite book or the book that's had the biggest impact on your recruiting career?
Wow. Recently, The Confidence Gap was great. And it's really focused in on you are not what you think. You're not even what you think you are. And you are not identified by the negative thoughts in your brain that are holding you back because the negative thought is, what happens if I pick up the phone and I call this guy? He's going to say no. You don't want that kind of rejection, and you start to say, okay, thank you, brain, that was designed, millions of years ago to keep me out of trouble. Now I'm going into something that is unknown and uncomfortable and unliked. And so that had to change. And so that was a book that I stumbled upon recently, which really helped to get me out of my brain that is designed to keep me out of stressful situations. So that was a good one. What was a recent one, kind of like on the fun side, Where the Crawdads Sing was a good one.
The Crawdads Sing, okay.
Oh man, that was an amazing book. 12 Rules for Life.
Oh, that
one that I'm reading with my wife and I are reading it with another couple that we get along with pretty good.
Okay,
and
cool.
So that one's good, but man, he is I think he's a Harvard professor and he loves to write. His second rule, he starts off with, you got to take care of yourself. And let me explain by starting, he actually went back and he started with Genesis in the Bible and starts explaining this new prerogative. And I'm just like, dude, come on, man, get to the point 18 pages later. And his point is yeah, so don't do that. Like, what?
That's the 18-page footnote to the one sentence point that he was
yes. It was horrible. It was like, what? Come on, get to the point. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'll definitely check out the confidence gap and I'll make sure to have it listed in the notes for the podcast. Well,
that's a good one. Another one that I recently was devouring. What was it called? It was The Talent War. I don't agree with anything wholeheartedly, but this one was pretty good. Jocko Willink did the forward for it, and it's pretty good. But they pose a lot of it's either this way or this way, and I'm thinking, well, why can't it be both ways? Why can't I have both? and that's where I get in trouble, publicly quite often when people say things like, and I think you and I had spoken about this. I don't remember. I was talking to somebody about this recently with Simon Sinek, and he says, don't hire for skill, you hire for attitude. You can always train skill. And every CEO or VP of sales that I've ever spoken to and asked, hey man, how about I present you with somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, but they've got a really great attitude. They kind of look at me with a blank stare of go find me the guy with both. Okay. Get out of here. And that kind of statement, it sounds great. These people are eating it up. Oh yes. Attitude is so much more important than skill. And I'm thinking, no, both, dude, both. It's the platitudes drive me crazy. Work hard. What was it? Not work hard, play hard. There's one that work smarter, not harder. And it sounds great, right? But I'm like, no, do both, dude. Come on.
It's that hiring for it's one of the things that I see at least on LinkedIn. It's the LinkedIn influencers say that one line, and it's just everybody's yeah. And then I'm like, wait, who's the hiring manager actually saying this? I almost just want to jump in. It's hey, you said you went and hired this person with XYZ gap. Can you point this person's LinkedIn profile? And by the way, I've seen the exact same things in 17 other profiles. Everybody hired this one person.
So annoying. Who's actually making these decisions? Because whoever actually holds the purse strings, I mean, think about it. If you take it down to a small example, let's say you run a company and you have 10 people working on your team and you need to hire one more person. Okay. And you hold the purse strings. It's actually going to come out of your pocket. Do you hire somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, but they have a great attitude for a true like individual contributor type role that actually matters a lot to the organization? Or do you hire somebody that has a great attitude and has some solid experience and proof through interview that they know what they're doing and they've been successful at this in the past?
It's the person always picks the people that have the previous success, like time and time again.
Absolutely. Because that makes that's a wise financial decision.
I mean, unless you got money to burn, just hire people, but that's where you become a not-for-profit or a non-profit.
I tried with a larger organization back in October, massive company, and hiring for these positions that are very big. So they've got the budget to pay, $150K base. And just, out of curiosity, I say, hey, so if I present somebody that has no experience, but just the best attitude, can I do that? No, dude, come on, get out of here. Okay, that's what I thought.
Have you ever tried sliding? I know, like, as a recruiter, we typically bring a few people to the table. Have you ever tried actually sliding one of those people in the batch of,
No, I don't trust that statement, that platitude enough to risk, if I submit 3 individuals, those 3 people count. If I have to submit more, I usually go with 3 or 5. That's my panel. And, unless you're kind of putting you're hoping that your hiring manager picks the least shitty of those 5, maybe that'll work. But and if your livelihood is depending on this placement, and I tend to treat every placement, at least at this point, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm, I don't care enough about a placement that I'll just submit whatever. Maybe someday I'll get there. I can't imagine so, but maybe. Have you ever slid into some sort of a search, a person that has no experience but a great attitude?
I actually have a few times, but it's only when I've actually personally known the person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how'd that work out for you?
Yeah. They've never hired him. By the way,
they have such a great attitude.
An artificial intelligence company that we were working with was looking for a GovCon salesperson, and I was just like, "Hey, this person I think would be great." Next to like 3 people that were like overly qualified and perfect.
They were actually great.
They were actually great. I was just like, "Hey," and it was like one of the things I added in there, like, "Hey, this is actually somebody I personally know." Okay. And normally I'm not like a person that recommends a friend because like my name is always on the line.
Yeah.
But,
it doesn't work very well because those other individuals that are successful in whatever they do are probably not jerks. You're not a jerk, and at least I haven't encountered many successful jerks. So I don't know. We'll see. Keep testing that theory. I'm not gonna, but I will rely upon your research to let me know if that's working.
Like I said, it was somebody I knew. So if it's somebody I don't know, yeah, no way. So jumping back into like recruiting, I know you're constantly recruiting sales professionals.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you're doing, I'd say, a little different than most of the other, heads of, somebody that owns a sales recruiting company out there? I know that you have a phenomenal podcast.
Yay. Yeah, the podcast is a brain fart that I've been entertaining for some time and finally let that out. But I don't know if I'm doing this different, but I feel as though I started to crack the code with regard to sales recruiting when I went into working at a corporate level sales recruiting position. And that was within the Xerox family of organizations, which treated me great, by the way, except for that last year. And the problem when I got to that organization is super high turnover rate, 60, 70, 80%, which was actually low within the industry, where you were looking at some organizations in that print realm were at over 100 to 120% turnover year over year. So everybody on the sales floor gone in less than 12 months. So we changed the way we were recruiting. We started focusing on past accomplishments and achievements.
Okay.
We started focusing on things that matter. We got away from behavioral interviews, which frankly, the problem that I have with behavioral interviews is if you say, okay, I've never played professional baseball. And I was always football and basketball and soccer, never into baseball. So if you said, Michael, tell me about that time where you had a phenomenal year in baseball and what made the difference. Tell me about a time. I have to just make it up, fake it one time in our interview and stick to my guns on that. And well, that one time, yeah, I was batting 500 and what really did it for me was the time that I spent in batting practice. I mean, some of the techniques that we practiced there just really sharpened my eye and sharpened my skill. And it was a phenomenal year. And after that, I had great years. I never did that. But if I fake it just one time, which is really, tell me about a time. I'll tell you about a time. I can make that up. So I focused more on achievement in those interviews, on role play as part of the interviews, and as actually giving them an opportunity to do the job during the interview. And then we start seeing that the quality of candidate becomes significantly better. And we start removing biases like, well, I played baseball and I think athletes can really sell. And I had to tell these guys, look, man, I really want to make a mark for myself here. So I'm going to call you out on that because it's absolute BS. There's no connection between or correlation between the way you throw a ball, catch a ball, hit a ball, and being able to hold a consultative conversation and carry a prospect through a sales cycle. It's just not proven. But there are organizations that have built their entire business model on hire athletes. And I don't see the connection. So we get away from things that sound good, make you feel comfortable, and really started to focus on what would give us a better candidate that would actually stick. And so there are certain things that I do now that are a result of many years in sales and sales recruiting that gave us got us down to turnover that was in the 30s versus in the 80s or the 60s, and rep production rates, sales production going just completely off the charts and doing things differently. So super long answer, but I think I've been cracking the code on sales recruiting for some time.
I mean, just like the amount of time, effort, energy it is to train somebody up in sales and then have them just leave after. I mean, it's
so
one of the
expensive.
Things, back when I was trying to recruit people at Aerotech where I was working, I was I always try to find people that were tired of working at Xerox. But I'm like, if you made it a year at Xerox, you're a rock star.
Dude, yes.
I wanted you.
and so you hire better. We started training better, and we started driving down retention. So the people that stuck around for more than a year, their earnings went from, first year average earnings, 50,000, then first year average earnings, 65, then first year average earnings between 65 and 85.
Nice.
Second year, significantly greater. Third year, significantly greater. And we've built in a proper career path that people are actually following. And we started seeing the organization perform significantly better. I'd like to think I had something to do with it.
I mean, it's one of those things that, a lot of pressure goes on recruiting. And, many times, at least on the corporate side of the house, like you don't actually get to see the true benefits of, the revenue generation that you're able to bring to the table as a recruiter. Sales, I think, is one of them. We're like engineering and, some of the stuff I support or, national security programs. I'm just like, all right, cool. Country's still safe. We're good to go.
It's hard to track your performance and its influence on the top line and bottom line in any recruiting position. I would say it's a little bit easier, I think, in sales recruiting, because I literally kept track of everybody that I recruited. And then I would look at their results and say, okay, these are the ones that I participated in hiring. Let me see the ones that you participated in hiring or that were here before me. And how do we compare? And my numbers are significantly greater because I felt I was doing a little bit better job in proactively recruiting and not reactively just hoping that somebody will apply for this position. So yeah, it was very different.
Post and praise, never the way.
The post and hope thing. That's too stressful for me to live off of that kind of a strategy.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen people do it. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, so I take more control over it and actually go out and figure out, okay, these are the criteria, baseline criteria. This is what we'd like to find. Who currently exists in the market that meets those requirements that we would love to hire? And then engage those individuals, connect and engage. And oh, by the way, currently hiring, let's have a quick chat. And it's 1,000 baby steps rather than you find somebody on LinkedIn and say, hey, you want a job? Whoa, chill, slow down.
So flipping into this, question for you, craziest hiring story.
Craziest hiring story. Oh, why does that come to mind? So the first one that comes to mind is I had two guys. Let's say there was Benjamin Mena 1 and Benjamin Mena 2. And number 2 wasn't going to get the job. But because they were both interviewing at the same time, my dumbass made the offer to the wrong person. Oh, so that was brutal. That was really bad. I actually get lightheaded thinking about it. And having to apologize to the Ben number 1 that I said no to, you weren't selected, and here's why. Oh, that was the worst. That was the worst on my behalf. The worst situation that led to us that still hiring somebody. We had a guy that came in for, I kid you not, he was in for about 6 face-to-face interviews over the course of like 2.5 months. I was like, guys, please tell this person no. You don't want to hire him. Why are you going to bring him back in to try and you just interview him? What do you possibly have left to ask? And they brought him in again, and they didn't make an offer. I was like, dude, I wrote it up. This is a standard offer. Dude actually finally gets an offer. We write it up for him, sales manager, and he accepts, still with the organization today. And he's advanced within the organization. But I'm like, dude, how did you put up with us for so long? So, hey, sometimes even when we don't get out of our own way, we still manage to do something good.
I mean, for sales, six interviews, that's a lot.
It's horrible. Over that period of time, and it wasn't 6 interviews in one day, which still sounds stressful, but 6 interviews.
Like, all right, we made it through the 4th one. Now what?
Exactly. What else? Who else can we put in front of them? Well, Jill was out, so let's have her interview the guy.
All right. Want to get this wrapped up. I try to keep this like a little short. Want to finish it off with this. For any newbie recruiters, or like, what advice would you give them, or what advice would you give yourself back in the day to be successful?
Wow. I would say, based on what I've learned recently, whether you are external or internal, treat it as though you are a headhunter, independent. Don't rely too heavily on tools. Don't rely too heavily on your job advertisements. And get out of your own head and just start developing one-on-one human relationships and start building your network yesterday. And go, if you, I would definitely recommend you go into some sort of a niche. And if you're going to go into this niche and because you're a former sales guy or former engineer, or you're currently an engineer, but you're going to go into sales, into recruiting 3 years from now, start building that network today. And the network that I started building years ago was, eventually I'm going to be doing this, and I know I'm going to be calling on VPs of sales and CEOs. So 3 or 5 or 10 years ago, I started connecting with those individuals on LinkedIn, obviously, and also connecting with every salesperson I could find in a B2B consultative sales type role. And that has significantly helped me in my roles yesterday in the past, and also my role today, because I'm very easily able to say, hey, we've been connected. This looks like it might make sense for you. Can we have a brief conversation? And it's a much easier ask for 3 minutes, 5 minutes of your time, because we have been connected. And I kind of think, based on my experience, this might make sense. So that helps a ton on the recruiting side. And then on the business development side, it helps a ton to be able to say, yeah, we've been connected, or we're connected. I'm connected to individuals in similar type roles, and I work with them on a daily basis. So that network really does come in handy. Okay.
Awesome. Well, want to wrap it up. Hey, Michael, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, man.
And, having fun, just, having everybody tell stories in my industry. So thank you so much for joining me.
Love it, man. I always enjoy talking shop.
All right. Talk to you guys later, and until the next episode.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast with Benjamin Mena. If you enjoyed, hit subscribe and leave a rating.